Yeah, I came. Sorry, you broke up just a second there. I don't beam wherever you were before. The connection was better. It
Okay.
feels like breaking up a little bit from where when I joined when you were walking around, it was clear, and wherever you settled,
All right. Let me move to a different spot.
no worries. I figured I'd do a proper Karbassiyoon household background as well. You can see some. I think my brother's homecoming king award back here, and some photos and plaques we won as kids.
That's great, though. Is that better connection now, you think?
I think it's coming back a little bit. It was wherever you were headed, it was getting worse and worse, I think. So
Okay. Well, so yeah, like just saying you're back in the U.S. for a while.
yeah. I came home. I came home just before Thanksgiving. Everything that's going on in the world right now, uh, everybody being locked down and whatnot. I just said I was doing much of my work from home anyway, so I just said I may as well go do it at home. So I hadn't seen my parents in nearly a year, and I haven't been home for Thanksgiving in, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 years. So decided to come home and do Thanksgiving and Christmas here, which has been awesome. But it's also been, I mean, as you know as well. Like I think I saw you kind of right at the beginning, but um, the whole goal was to kind of, and like I'm never really home for more than I guess like a week generally. So there's so many people I want to see, but because of the state of the world right now, it makes more sense to kind of just sit inside, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, it makes it trying to turn, there we go. Making it kind of tough to visit and see everybody, but at least you get to spend some time with your parents and your brother.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah,
sure.
for sure.
And then
Because
you're gonna,
as 30 plus year olds, you don't spend generally like a month and a half with your parents, like, especially with your brother as well. So I think it's been a special time. So there's some positives we can take from all this.
yeah, oh yeah, we gotta do it. That's for sure. So, well, just kind of tell about how your time in the club at Roanoke Star, now VBR Star. Just give a little recap of that and how it turned into when you went to Arsenal and played professionally.
Yeah, I mean, I joined. I think I joined the Ronix Star when I was about 8 years old. I played up a year my very first year. I was kind of eager to go to get after it. I went from being like far far the youngest in my age group to I guess the older ones in my age group the second year, under 9 all the way up to under 18. Kind of went through all the ranks. I think the last couple of years I played up a couple an age group or so as well. Yeah, it was amazing. I've always said Ronix Star provided like amazing like structure, good coaching. Like the facilities were awesome. The leagues that we played in were great as well. So I got exposed to a lot of travel, not only within the state but also kind of opportunities to play in ODP, and then from there making district teams and then state teams and regional teams. It just kind of opened a lot of doors, obviously, and there was also a great group of kind of just players in the valley that were really motivated and disciplined and eager to train on their own as well outside of the Roanoke Star. Nearly all those kids played in the Roanoke Star as well, but we'd always get together, outside of our 2 or 3 times a week training with our team, and always play together and work on our small-sided games, work on finishing. There was a group of like 5, 6, 7 of us that would kind of meet up down at River's Edge, and I rode my bike past there the other day, and it's still a flood of came back, which was great to see. Certainly different, but it was, yeah. That's on top of the Roanoke Star stuff. I think I can't stress enough how important it is. And I've had these conversations with you all the time. You'll get so far training in a structured environment, and then obviously the kids that really want to go far have to kind of break away and do stuff on their own and in groups and use what they learn on their own and bring it back into the Roanoke Star environment and continue growing that way.
Yeah, I was glad you brought that up. That was going to be my next question. I know how important it is, but for you to work outside of training, if you want to be the best player you can possibly be, you have to do work outside of your regular team training sessions.
Yeah, I mean by no means is a plug for my book, but I talk about it a lot in my book about how I kind of had this realization when I was, I think like 13. I went to the Norway Cup. 13 or 14, I went to the Norway Cup with the state team. I think you were on that trip as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Uh, And it was kind of then that I realized that, like, okay, I'd grown up thinking about the Ronix Star and thinking about the Valley and the competition here, and then also like within the state, and then to an extent the regional teams and all this. But it was kind of like this huge, kind of this light went off to let me know that, if I wanted to make it, I'm competing against kids from Africa and kids from Europe and kids from South America, and I know that those players that are at the top of the world's game aren't just training 3 times a week with their team in a structured environment for an hour and a half a night. Like those kids are, they might not even have a team. They're growing up
Right.
down to the beach or going into their neighborhood and playing pickup whenever they get the chance to. And I think a lot of that, a big thing you learn there as well is kind of just the, I don't want to say like not the stuff that you wouldn't learn in a structured environment, but you learn how to like look after yourself as well when you're playing in a 3v3 where, kids your age or a little bit older are joining and roughing you around and you're playing for, points here and there. Like you learn a lot of like the different aspects of the game that, your coach at under 14 might not necessarily have either time to teach you or it might not particularly be right to teach you this, but you learn a lot on the playground, you learn to look after yourself. So, I can't stress that enough. And even when I wasn't joining up with my good friends playing at River's Edge, I was always kind of in my backyard here as well after school, dribbling through cones, banging walls against the brick wall here, breaking a window just one time, and kind of and working out in that regard too. And also this, for the younger players, like how much should you work. Like I would come, and this is just my experience, and up playing at a pretty amazing level. I would come home from school and just go to my backyard and spend about an hour and a half, working on my weak foot, working on my passing, working on dribbling. And even if I had training that night with the Ronix Star, I would just finish up after an hour and a half here, grab my boots, get in my car, drive to training, train for another hour and a half with the team and learn, fundamentals of shape, and we're playing in a team, and then come home, do my homework, and, go to bed. So that was kind of what my routine looked like from about 13 on to when I graduated high school.
Yeah, I remember, you would even be, if it was bad weather, you'd be out there training and working out on your own. And, because it is a commitment, it is a sacrifice, and it's not easy to be a top level player, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think, by no means am I anywhere near like Thierry Henry and all these guys, but I think Henry always said it's lonely at the top. And, in order to be up there, you do have to make a lot of sacrifices and, you know, to come home and turn an Xbox on or turn the television on and play video until, until training, or, you can go out and improve yourself if that's what you want to do, and for me, I always wanted to be a professional soccer player. So I had to figure out, within what it would take to actually do it. And, when you start doing it, when you start working on your first touch, working on your passing, working on your finishing, like you start to actually see it. You see those results at the weekend. Start to see those results, on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday with your team. You start to see that you're getting better than the players that are around you who aren't actually doing stuff outside of team training. So I can't stress enough, how important it is. It's the same as, to me, it's the same as if you want to be a doctor, you can go to class and listen to what the professor says, but you're going to go back and study your butt off and try to learn as much as you can, understand how the body works and how everything works in your own time, just as much as you are when you're in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, a great golfer is going to hit 1,000 golf balls in a day, practicing, and
Exactly.
that's what it takes, and I think that's important for our players to hear, that you just don't go to practice and then you're all done and you're going to be a great player. It takes that extra, and then also it takes playing against good competition, right? I mean, I talk to everybody about how important it is to play against good competition to make you a better player.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the great things about the group that we had, here in Roanoke. There was like Drew Harrison and John Hartman and a couple other guys who've been in national teams, national camps, and we, not only did we enjoy, playing small-sided games with one another, but we also enjoyed just, trying to be better than one another as well and pushing ourselves and, kind of also lifting ourselves up as well as we kind of went in that journey. From there, that's a very, very like microcosm of the space. And then as you continue to push yourself. Like when I went to Arsenal, the chief scout told me when I was on my trial, he said, the odds, Danny, of you making it at Arsenal, the odds of you making it as a professional footballer are very, very small. Like, even though potentially we might offer you a contract, the odds of you making it and having a career are very small. The odds of you making it at Arsenal are like far small. So they kind of just laid it out there. And this was at a time when it was kind of like the opposite with the college recruitment, which is nothing against them because they're trying to recruit you to come to their school. They're telling me, Danny, come here, you'll get, you have a 4-year full ride, you'll get a top education, you'll play, you'll be a star here, and then you'll go to MLS and everything will be like, then you'll be a professional. These guys, Arsenal were recruiting me, and they were also saying like the odds of you making it are slim to none, but like this is what you work for, because for the percentage that do actually make it, it's a dream realized. It's, everything that you've worked for, kind of turning into a reality essentially. And yeah, when I went there, it was just after I'd gone to ESP camp, which was no longer around, but it was a college recruiting camp. And that camp admittedly was the best competition, the best camp that I'd ever been to with the best players. It was 150 of the nation's like best high school players. So it was, national team players, regional team players, all these guys there that were just exceptional. And I'd never been in an environment like that. So I was getting pushed there. And then next thing I know, I'm at Arsenal and training in the reserves, and suddenly the level is, 10x that of what I was experiencing at ESP. And again, like, you just have to find yourself and find yourself and get yourself in a bit of a, by pushing yourself, you find yourself in a new comfort zone where you're like, okay, like I actually can do this. Like this is what I, when I'm watching the games on the television every weekend, like, and I see the players moving around fast, like this is what I dreamed of and this is what I'm here for. Then the last day of my trial, I got asked to train with the first team. And if the level from ESP to the reserves was 10x, the reserves to the first team was like, another 30x basically. And that was guys like Henri and Perez and Vieira, is like just some of the best players, that have ever played, and one of the best sides, Arsenal that time was one of the best sides ever put together. And again, you kind of just, they throw you into those situations, from a, never mind a football side point of view, but like just from like a personal development side of you, to see whether you'll sink or swim, and whether you'll cower, or whether you'll like rise to the occasion. And yeah, it was fascinating. Every time I was thrown into these different situations, they were hard. Trust me. I was part of my language, crapping myself, like running out to Arsenal first team at the time. Arsene Wenger sat there, in the middle of the training ground, and the team's jogging around, and I'm running out to join Henri and these guys in their warm up. And then suddenly, at the end of the session, Wenger's handing out shirts for who's on what team, and I was paired with like Henri. So suddenly, like, I'm in a training session with Henri as the other striker on my team. So yeah, there's like a section of you where you're just like, I just want to sit here and watch this because I've never seen it. And then you realize you're also a part of the session, and that you have to provide value. Otherwise, you'll be on the plane heading home without a contract. So pushing yourself and getting yourself outside of a comfort zone is important, and only makes you better and makes you more comfortable to continue progressing.
Yeah, and and you've got to continue to work hard, but there's a bit of luck involved in it as well. I mean, there's some awesome players that don't make it sometimes, but I know, like, the ESP camp, I remember we got you on the waiting list, and you weren't even supposed to go there until like a couple of days prior to that camp, and if you hadn't gone to that camp, but you did, and then you got a chance to show yourself at Arsenal, so that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on that before you move on, I think like that luck piece, making it as a pro, or making it at the top, I think of any field, does require a little bit of, like, it's all that hard work, and then that bit of luck that allows that hard work, the opportunity to shine when the opportunity arises. Like as you said, I got called, I think 2 days before the camp started, and they said, I was lucky because it was in Wilmington, right? And they said,
right,
can you drive to Wilmington? Like, if the camp was in, I don't know, California or something, like, whether or not they would have looked at the waiting list and said, yeah, we'll get him a flight and bring him over, is one thing. I don't know. But like, my dad certainly wouldn't have been able to drive, to California too. So yeah, kind of it all came together, but I was definitely ready for it.
Yeah. And why don't you talk a little bit about, beginning at Arsenal? I mean, you've already said a little bit, but, starting over there, moving to England and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean it was really really hard. Admittedly, like I thought, at the time, as I said, I was 18 when I moved over there, and I'd come out of this period where I've been helping my parents kind of clean up all the junk in my house, and I found this binder that had basically like all these college letters when they used to send like all these letters saying like, hey, like, we want you to school, a full scholarship, all I want you to come visit, all this. And I had all those letters. It makes you like, I've never felt I still haven't ever felt most wanted in my life, right? Like I was 18, every school in the country wanted me to come visit and offer me a scholarship and all that. So that was amazing. And then I go to Arsenal, and not they like obviously made me feel really wanted, but then it's just like, wow, like this isn't just I'm paying to play soccer, and like, like I get my uniform and then I show up at tournaments every so often. Like the coach, like you're getting paid to play. The coaches are getting paid to develop players. They're being judged on how many players they're developing. Like the environment suddenly goes from being like an intense, travel soccer environment in the Ronix Star and development, all this, to suddenly like people's livelihoods are on the line here in terms of like whether or not they do their job in a really good way. And it was, yeah, it was really stressful. I mean, I felt like I forgot how to play soccer for like the first 6 months. It was, I mean, it was tough. I mean, I probably would have spoken to you during that period. I spoke to my parents quite a bit, and just told them, I was like, I don't know if I made the right decision by any means. Like maybe I should have just gone to school and like just continue to develop, not in a comfort zone, but actually like in a place where I knew I was in a safer area growing. After 6 months, like I kind of just like shedded that and got to play in a couple of reserve games and got a little bit more confident and started to make kind of friends within the team as well. And then after that first year, when I came back home, I came back home for like the summer for, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in the summer. And then I went back for preseason again. And I went back just like fully energized and ready to kind of hit the ground running. At that point, I'd also switched positions. I'd gone to left back. So I was no longer, I was no longer like 10th in line as a striker for the first team. Suddenly I was like, kind of third choice as a left back behind Ashley Cole and Clichy. And, as you know, I ended up getting to play three, 4 games. I think somebody just asked a question, said, did you play like a real game? I didn't play a real game. I played a bunch in the reserves, and I got to play 3 times in the first team at Arsenal. So, but all that came after, it's a bit of a roller coaster. I think a lot of people just look at, like, they watch the television on the weekend and they see Arsenal playing Manchester United or Arsenal playing Chelsea, and it's like that's all they see, and they see 11 players that are really good, or 22 players that are really good playing at a really high level, making it look easy. Whereas first team squads are made of 25 guys, so there's a lot of guys that weren't even picked to play, just at that game. Never mind youngsters trying to make it into the first team. So there's a lot that happens away from the pitch in terms of just like development, injuries, whether coaches see a future in you. There's a lot that relies on that as well. So yeah, it wasn't very straightforward. And when I did get to make my debut, it was definitely, again, as I say, this culmination of a lot of dreams kind of coming together.
Yeah, and not only did you really play in a game, but you scored in a real game as well. So
Yeah.
I think still the only American to score for Arsenal, correct?
Yeah, there's another boy there now that hasn't is American that scored. Who's exceptional. Is exceptional. He grew up in the UK, but I'm not gonna take that away. I'm still the first.
That's right. That's right. The first one for sure. Definitely. And I mean, talk to everybody a little bit about, one thing I saw. I mean, I got lucky, Danny. You invited me over, and I got to go to the training grounds, and then I got to eat lunch, with the first team and the reserve team. And, I just, I saw the difference how, like, the first team treated you than all the other reserve players. At the time, you were on the reserve team. But it just seems like they all respected you and all, come in, Danny Karbassiyoon, and yell at your name or something. So, how do you be humble but still playing at that level and being in the same room with Henri and all those guys. I mean, that's got to be a tough thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think like at the end of the day, like a lot of those guys, and even I'd like to think, I mean, yeah, when I went there, I thought, I was on top of the world, and I was like, I'm the best player ever coming out of Virginia. In my head, you have to an extent, there's like a balance where you have to really believe in yourself, but you also have to maintain some level of, staying grounded as well. Henri at the time was by far the best striker in the world. If it was up to he walked around with like this air of arrogance about him because he was the best striker in the world. He knew he was basically scoring on demand whenever he wanted, right? But he was also, when my dad and I were there on my trial, like he walked in and came right over and introduced himself and said hi, and then walked into the dressing room. And it's like there's while you can have this like kind of confidence about you, there's also just a little bit of humanity about you that's like, look, at the end of the day, we're soccer players, we're good at what we do, but it doesn't mean we can't be nice people and respect and like and not everybody was like that by any means. Some were far I don't know, more open and nicer than others. Probably the guys that you're referring to that kind of just came over and said hi, like those guys probably would have seen me with somebody that was visiting from home and been like, let's show the guy that he's with that Danny's one of us, and he's like welcome here, and he's not just like some schlep that's here that doesn't matter. And I mean, me, like I've always walked around with a smile on my face saying hi, thank you, please.
Right.
And again, that can't always be said for everyone. I'm not saying like a majority of people are like that or anything, but like when you kind of combine people from all over the world into this like small area and say you're uniting around football, like that's what you're here for. But like there's people from Africa, South America, people from Europe, people from North America, like some people only speak French, some people only speak Spanish, some people just also don't feel comfortable, they don't speak English, so they might not even come up and say hi to you because they don't want to embarrass themselves, right?
Right.
So I think like that's, again, it's just an interesting place to be. I look at this now like removed from it, right? Like at the time I was just like, I'm here to play soccer. I saw that guy play on soccer in the World Cup, last week. So I'm here, like we're all here for the beautiful game. But I think it's like, it's really interesting when you remove yourself and you say, wow, it's actually a really neat kind of like human experiment where all these people are united around one thing. All these cultures kind of come in, all these different religions, all these different languages, all these different traditions. Like imagine like you go into the dressing room and you'd always hear like the guys from the Ivory Coast, like Kolo Touré and Emmanuel Boué, would come in, and for them, music was like life, right? Like there's a specific type of music in the Ivory Coast they listen to that's like just the most upbeat, happy dance music ever, and like you'd always hear it coming out of the first team dressing room, and you'd always see those guys jumping around, bouncing around, all happy. And it was just, again, it's just a different culture I'd never seen before. I still have some of the music and still dance to it. I love it. It's awesome. Yeah, it was nice seeing like all that stuff kind of under one roof.
Do you have the rhythm?
No, I did not have the rhythm.
Oh gosh, yeah, because I just think it's an important thing for players to learn. I mean, you can be your best player on your club team, but there's always somebody better than you. I mean, pretty much, unless you're the best player in the world, there's always somebody better. So you've got to strive and work hard to become better. You're never ever finished, right? Training as a player.
Yeah, I mean, and those guys, a lot of those guys are, the reason they're there is because they are remarkably competitive guys that have done a lot of stuff, worked on their own, worked hard like their entire lives to get there. And then again, it's an interesting place. A lot of people are like, oh, well, when you were 18, it must have been amazing. Some of the older like first teamers, like especially in your position, did they teach you and like did they help you along the way? And I would say some of the older players did, yes, but the guys in my position, not necessarily. Ashley Cole was 23, I was 18. Ashley Cole was 23, and Clichy was 17. So Clichy was like a year younger than me and like 100 times better than me. Cole was older than me and better than me. And like he just established himself in the English national team. He played in like the World Cup 2002. Like these guys had no, like, not that they have no incentive to improve you, but they're kind of just like, this is my position. I want this.
Right.
I want this to be. I'll help you to an extent. And like, I got on with them. Like I was friends with Clichy, and I was friends with Ashley Cole as well to an extent. Whereas the older guys like Sol Campbell, for example, at the time, and like Martin Keown, for example, would actively, like if you were out of position and the ball went out of play, they'd actively come over and tell you, sometimes in a really nice way, sometimes not in a very nice, uh, what you could have done to improve like the situation that had just played out, basically. So yeah, there's a bit of both. But at the end of the day, like those guys want the starting position, like,
Right.
you know,
They don't want to lose it to you.
and there's a reason they're there. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good that all kind of develops and works out. So, so why don't you tell us a little bit? What are you doing now? Just as much as just kind of what are you doing for your job? I know you're still living in London, and won't you update everybody kind of what's going on right now?
Yeah, so I'm in London now. I moved to London. I'm trying to think, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, I think 5 years ago now. Really cool to be back kind of as an adult now. So as a footballer living there, it was like very, not isolated, but you go to the training ground, then in your off time to um, just get ready for the next training session or the next game, right? Whereas now as an adult, I said if I did move back to London, I'd want to live in the middle of the city and actually experience London for what it's worth. And it's a marvelous, marvelous city. It's amazing. So yeah, I moved back there. I do a couple things. I still consult a bit at Arsenal, so I'm helping with a little bit of like the technology side of things, kind of consulting on how tech and football can come together and how we can make processes more efficient through tech. And then and that kind of comes from, it sounds like a random jump, but I probably 7 years ago now, I think a friend of mine and I started a company, a tech company, and we were building mobile games. I learned a lot about building products and managing developers and all of that stuff. So I kind of like, I've always wanted to go into tech and like was fascinated by it. I've always loved building things and been like creative in that respect. So I was doing that. That startup sadly failed, so we wound it down. But I used what I learned from that to kind of segue and went and pitched Arsenal and said, I can lead some projects if you need, in like technology and building different things to make us more efficient there. And then I also have another startup now with some friends that are actually on this call right now. I believe I saw a couple of them join. Whether or not they're still here, I don't know. We help brands on the digital side organize all their digital assets. To make finding stuff much, much faster and more efficient. So doing a couple things, but it's been, still keep my finger close to the pulse at Arsenal.
So now with Arsenal, you're more on the IT side,
Yeah.
developing scouting programs, and things like that for the IT. So you're not, are you going out and watching as many games as you used to scout
No,
players or not?
not really. So I think six, maybe 7 years, I think, full time in CONCACAF. And then when I moved back to England, I was still doing a little bit of part-time scouting around London. So I would do like Championship and Premier League and Champions League games. A lot of people, I think, find that it's interesting. Like a lot of clubs will send scouts. Even like I would go, for example, I went to watch, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I went to watch PSG Chelsea, for example, because we were watching a player that was potentially going to be out of contract at Chelsea, and if he was out of contract, then you have to know, if is he worth kind of inquiring about. And then also another player at PSG at the time. But yeah, scouts generally tend to go to these games, and like you'll go and there'll be maybe 10, 12 other scouts. If you go to a Premier League game, for example, there'll be 12 Premier League teams, maybe a foreign team as well, depending on who's playing, sat kind of in a row. It's a really weird a really weird like setup where there's 12 guys sat in a row. If people know each other, they'll say hi to each other and like catch up. It'll be a little bit of like a boys club in that regard. Like guys that have been on the circuit for a long time and like see each other and say, well, oh, what club are you at now? I'm at Bradford. Oh, great. I'm at Brentford now, blah, blah. Otherwise it's just like 10 guys that don't talk to each other that all know they're all scouts. They kind of just like have their head down.
Right.
Which is it's a weird thing. I mean, because of coronavirus now,
Right.
I think only the only scouts that are allowed in right now, for example, I think you're allowed to call up and say if you're playing the team in 3 weeks, they're allowing opposition analysis scouts to go in, but they're not they're not just giving out tickets because of all the social distancing stuff. But yeah, it's a really weird dynamic, I mean, and it's also strange to think like you'll be at a Premier League game. So I would just like when I was doing it part time over the past couple of years, I'd go to some great games, right? In London, there's a lot of good Premier League teams. Like Chelsea are there. We're there. I don't even want to say their name, but our big are there. Like our rivals are there. Charlton, Fulham, West Ham. Like there's a lot of teams there. So um, you you'd go and when you're watching like kind of when you're watching the game, like you're just there to do work. So you're watching your player and you're hoping for a good seat, and you get really pompous, which is really weird. So I told a couple of my friends, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to Palace, but Palace, they put the scouts in the corner of the stadium. You're kind of behind this like bar, and you can't really see the game. And they're like, Danny, you're so spoiled now. You're in a Premier League game, And I'm like I'm there to do work, right? You're there
Right.
the game, and if it's not a very convenient seat, it's hard to do your job. So yeah, it's funny too. The Palace, they seat you in the season ticket holder, so you're sat there watching a game. If Palace score, everybody around you is going absolutely bananas, and you're sat in a row with 10 other people sitting there like kind of huddled over while people are yelling at you saying like, don't you scout him, like, sorry. So it's a weird situation sometimes.
So what's the most like loudest, wildest stadium you've ever been in, whether you're a scout or a player, or what would you say would be in the most crazy environment
uh,
that you've been in
I'm,
as a soccer professional?
I'm trying to think. I went and saw. So when I was covering CONCACAF, I went to Mexico quite a bit, and I went to Azteca. I went to Azteca maybe 6 or 7 times, I think. Once for um, the Mexican League final, I think in 2000, I forgot 2008 or something, and it was 2007 maybe. It was Blanco's. It was Blanco, like Cuauhtemoc Blanco's last game in a Club America jersey at America because he was leaving. He was going to the Chicago Fire, I think, the following year. They had one other game, the opposite leg of the final at Pachuca, but I got to see that game, and it was just like he was a legend, right, at Club America. So there was, I mean, the stadium seats 100 odd thousand people, 100,000 people, and like it's wild. Like it was very very wild, very loud, and it's also it's manic afterwards, right? Like you're in the middle of Mexico City. It's not like you just come outside and hail an Uber or like grab a taxi and hope for the best. So
Right.
uh, actually, I got my driver. Like whenever I'd go there, I would say my driver, like the guy that would take me to games. He would tell me where he was going to be after the game. I actually got him a ticket, so he would come into the stadium with me, just so I knew because it was going to be impossible to find him after the game. Um, that was crazy. PSG. I went to a PSG. Who did they play? I'm blank. I went to watch PSG Bayern Munich actually at PSG in Paris a couple years ago in the Champions League, and the atmosphere in Paris was rocking as well. Their ultras are phenomenal. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of playing, I got to play at Old Trafford for Arsenal, so
Wow.
walking out in front of whatever 75,000 people was pretty amazing. Just an amazing kind of like setting and whatnot. Especially at the time, that rivalry was ridiculous. So it was definitely a cool game to be a part of.
That's great. That's awesome. I think Borussia Dortmund's my loudest stadium I've ever been to.
Yeah, I've actually never been. I've never been to Dortmund. But
Right.
I've heard it's a wild place.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, I just wanted to, spend some time and touch base. Anything you want to give in closing to our players, or any words of advice or anything?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I can't stress enough the importance of kind of that hard work away from your coaches and away from your kind of like the disciplined, structured stuff that you do 3 or 4 times a week. I'm not sure how many times you guys train right now, but away from that is where you'll get much much better. B, where your kind of creativity will be able to just like run rampant, and you'll try stuff that you might otherwise not try in training. And also gives you a chance to dream, right? Like I always joked around saying like my backyard was the San Siro, as the Rose Bowl all in one, depending on what my head was thinking, on the day. And then also that third piece is that it gives you this confidence and this desire as you start to improve to, when you go mentally knowing that you're doing stuff that others aren't, that they might be progressing like this and you're progressing like this. Like it gives you a good feeling. And also just like, you can apply it to anything in life. When you start to see yourself more and more and getting better and better, you start to think like, what else can I do in life that will make me just better at things, and get into good habits and just improve myself. So I can't stress that enough in terms of just improving yourself as a footballer and as a person, going out on your own, training, working hard, and getting better and better on a daily basis.
Yeah, playing with the best players against the best competition with the best coaches and working out, those are key things, aren't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Whenever you can push yourself and make yourself slightly uncomfortable, it's always good. Uh,
Yep. Yep. You were going to come home from Arsenal the first few weeks, remember? Because you were not comfortable at the
yeah,
beginning, but look how it worked out. And plus,
exactly.
wanted to let everybody know Danny's book is at the soccer stop. There's a few signed copies left there. So if anybody's looking for Danny's book, it's a great book about him growing up in Roanoke and going through Arsenal, the Arsenal Yankees. So those books are at the store. I did check. There's, I think, like 3 or 4 left, but they're autographed for Christmas if you guys want that book. But it's a great book to read for sure. So, well, Danny, I want to say happy holidays and have a great Christmas and
Thank
to
you.
you and your family. And we really appreciate you coming on. So hopefully, well, next time we'll get you on, you'll be probably back in London.
Yeah, well, hopefully the next time I'm here, I'll actually be able to come out and see people and
Right.
wearing a suit. So,
Right. Well, have a safe trip and great seeing you.
thank you guys. Have a good
All
one.
right.
Thanks for having
See
me.
you.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.